So let's start with your book. I love the first title. The work of men begins with pain, and we seem to be okay with physical pain as men. You know, rub some dirt in it, we get on with it. But emotional and psychological, not so much. So when you picked that sentence to open your book, what was that about?
I mean, there was a few different threads to it. One was personal experience of my avoidance of my own personal pain for so long was the exact thing that caused collapse in my life and chaos and sabotage and destruction. And so part of it was simply just acknowledging the path that I had to walk to have a more robust understanding of who I am. And then seeing men throughout, the last decade of working with guys who have done the exact same thing, where they've avoided pain, they've avoided their suffering, they pretend like it's not happening, they use all types of, methods like weed and booze and women and porn to try and avoid it.
Hmm.
And that ends up causing chaos and collapsing their life. So, there's sort of a multitude of different things, but I think at the heart of it, I didn't talk about this in the book because it's a little bit more abstract, but I think at the heart of it, it's it is a masculine path to move towards suffering. And there's a kind of psychological truth and dichotomy where when you avoid pain and suffering, you become more fragile. You become inherently weaker
Mm.
psychologically, emotionally, physically. And as men, we don't we don't want that. We want to be robust. We know that it's in order to be of greatest service to the world, you have to develop a kind of resiliency.
Mm.
You could call it. You just think about it as like the calluses, psychologically and emotionally. That you have some level of grit and resiliency within you. And I think for many men, what ends up happening is that the experiences of their life don't actually support them in developing that resiliency, in learning how to alchemize pain into meaning or purpose. And so what ends up happening is that they're just carrying around the heavy weight and burden of childhood hurt, uh, relational dysfunction, career fuck ups, financial, poor financial decisions. And it just starts to accumulate and accumulate and amass. And what happens is that a man will get to his 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, and he's just carrying around these, he's sort of like walking around with cement blocks on
Mm.
his feet. And those cement blocks are the accumulation of all the pain that he's never dealt with. And and honestly, that as a society, we've sort of dropped the ball in being able to teach men what to do with that, how to actually navigate through it. And so I started the book there because I do think that for men in our modern culture, that is the primary work. And Jung said, if you can deal with your shadow, you've done something. Basically, you've done something great for humanity. That if you as a man can face and confront your shadow, your own pain, your own suffering, your own dysfunction, that yes, you've done something meaningful for yourself, but you've actually done something meaningful to alleviate the suffering of the collective.
Hmm.
And that in itself, just that in itself, if you really sit with it and tune into it, there's something not only noble about it, but there's something inherently meaningful and purpose inducing.
Mm.
So when we have a vacuum of meaning, when we have a vacuum of purpose, it's helpful to give men, which we do in our culture today. I would argue that we have a vacuum of meaning and purpose. It's helpful to give men direction of here's where you can actually locate meaning. Here's where you can locate purpose. And unfortunately, it's usually not in the spots and places that we want it to be. We're sort of sold this idea through modernity and modern culture that it should be found on the couch watching Netflix or rubbing what off, watching your favorite porn video. And it's
Right.
just not there, right? It's just never there. And it's so disheartening and frustrating.
Mm.
But it's always in the places where we have to meet some type of psychological, emotional, or physical edge.
Hmm. Yeah, and we use things to numb out, check out to avoid it.